What's going on, everyone in the Jason Nation? My name is Jason and welcome back to another Sun and Moon video. Today is something a little bit different, another theory coming your way just like usual, but the difference is today this is going to be sort of a theory add-on slash disproving interesting comments. I don't really know what to call this. It'll come along the way as I go to title the video. I really don't know what this is going to be called, but this is sort of going to connect everything you've been wondering about why I've been so prominent in saying that Kanto and Johto are modeling X and Y and Sun and Moon, so Kalos and Alola. Now, that does not obviously confirm by any means. It's not like an official confirmed fact that they are going to not model, but in some ways represent the original two generations. But I have a pretty good theory in mind here that could definitely set it all in stone for you guys. And for those of you who didn't believe me on my original storyline explained video and left a lot of different comments, I'm going to disprove some of those, talk about them, and hopefully blow your mind yet again. Okay. So this is a comment I have gotten endless times on this video, and so many people, I guess, either didn't listen, didn't care, or didn't listen. But anyway, regardless, in the video, and I'll play the part that I'm talking about here for you guys specifically. Imagine now if the rainbow Pokemon itself, Ho-Oh, and the moon Pokemon itself, Lugia. Okay, now, that's one thing I gotta point out. That is one thing I gotta point out. A lot of people, I also got comments about that too. People saying, what are you talking about? Lugia does not have anything to do with the moon. Maybe. Okay, maybe. Maybe it doesn't directly, but let me show you something that disproves that. Alright, so if we come onto the Bulbapedia page for Lugia, one thing we can read under its origin of its name is Lugia may be derived from Lutetium, hopefully I said that correctly, a silverish element, which in turn is named after Lutetia, the Roman name for Paris, the city of light, in ways that connects to Kalos, because like I mentioned previously, Kalos is sort of in some ways represented or based upon France, or part of it is based upon France. Now remember one thing, I'm going to mention this in this part of the video right now so people can keep this in their heads for later, is that just because, keep this in mind, just because there's, let's say, Lumio City that's supposedly based off France because of the Prism Tower, which is based off the Eiffel Tower. Just because there is similar items, similar landmarks, similar whatever, that may look or represent something from a real life setting, but when it's put into a video game, the reason why it's, you know, you sort of give it that creative freedom, unless it specifically states it's based off of that part of the world, there's no real facts to prove whether or not Kalos is actually set in France. It's just a part of it was modeled or inspired from a part of France and put into the game. That doesn't necessarily mean the game takes place in France, but one thing we do know is Alola, the new region that we play in for Sun and Moon, that does take place in Hawaii. We do know that for a fact, but we don't know necessarily where the Kalos region is located. So it could be in Paris, but based on what I'm going to say later on in the theory, that might not make as much sense. It may also involve Lugia, the Latin term to lie dormant, alluding to the way Lugia lies at the bottom of the sea, and also Luna, Latin for moon. Now, what's interesting, it's comparing it to moon. So in some ways, some parts of its name, the Lu part more so, or Lugia, Luna, I don't really exactly know how this sort of breaks down, but more or less in some parts of its name is referencing the Latin term for moon, which is whatever. Okay, that's one thing, but that doesn't prove a whole bunch of other stuff, does it? Well, one thing that does possibly prove it is I got a tweet about, I'd say nearly a month ago, from this guy, the Oily Pineapple, or Average Joe, or whatever. Now, he tweeted me saying, I think you might be right about Ho-Oh and Lugia being in Sun and Moon. Take a look at these. And he tweets me these two pictures, which are screenshots from the opening of Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Now, I'm sitting here thinking, what is so significant about these pictures? He tweets me this one and this one. He tweets me both Lugia and Ho-Oh. But then I realized something. He says himself, look behind. And what's interesting, and I didn't even realize this until the guy actually made it very apparent to me, is that Ho-Oh flies in from the sun, and Lugia flies in from the moon. And it's a very significant difference in terms of colors. So there's clearly, they didn't make one solid background that was a clear sky for them to fly into. They differentiated the way these two look. This one's obviously a more darker theme, and it's got more of a moonlight glow effect over the it's very, very obvious that it's like a glow of the moon over the tides and all that. Now, there's also water right here, but what's interesting is the scenery has changed. There's mountains here instead. There's trees here instead in this one. It's more of a cloudy sky, and this is sunset, but this is straight up like nighttime. So there's a very big differentiation between the two, which in some way makes me believe there's some hidden meaning behind it, other than the fact that obviously they want to prove that Lugia is in some way related to the moon and that Ho-Oh is in some way related to the sun. Now, I got many comments similar to this one as well, and here's where I'm going to address that. The actual sort of breakdown analysis for Lunala and Solgaleo, which again still aren't their confirmed names, but I'm pretty sure that's what they are at this point. I think everybody knows that. I got a lot of comments like this. This theory is great. The only thing is the legendary mascots for the game are completely left out, or would be insignificant in this case. Now, a lot of people were like giving me shit. Worst comments this guy. This guy was very nice about it, but there's oh god, there was some comments. But regardless, it's true. I didn't mention anything to do with the sun or the moon legendary in this video. But the reason why, and I mentioned this, I don't remember exactly when, but I know I did, that this video was made, or this video right here, was made before the announcement of Pokemon Sun and Moon's new legendaries, new starters, all that. This was way before that. Well, not way before, but a significant amount of time before that. So how would I have known? Nobody would have known, right? And that's why I disclaimed that, because I don't know the roles, the way they look, or anything to do about these Sun and Moon legendaries. At least I didn't at the time. That's why I exclaimed that. But I will explain probably what they will tie into later on in this video. So don't worry, your mind will still be blown. You guys know when I open up Photoshop, shit's about to get serious. Okay, so here's the part where your mind will hopefully start to get blown, because I shouldn't say it's gonna be blown yet, because some of you may already know about this again. But here's what we can do. We can safely assume that Pokemon Sun and Moon are actually the sequel to Pokemon X and Y. So we can assume that these two are in some ways related. The way it connects, I predicted in past videos, so I'll leave a link on screen to that somewhere if I can remember to do that. But it's not confirmed, just a theory, so you don't really know how they bridge together quite yet. But we're starting to inch closer towards that. Regardless, here's something that not a lot of people, well, a lot of people have noticed, but some people haven't. And for those of you who haven't noticed this, here's something else to tie this in. First of all, if you look at Pokemon Red and Blue, comparing it to Pokemon X and Y, first of all, Pokemon Red and Blue were the first games to come out. We all know that. Pokemon Sun and Moon, they are the games to celebrate the 20th anniversary. So, with that said, this is where this could actually tie in quite a lot. Obviously, for something as big as the 20th anniversary, you want to do something that sort of goes out with a bang. Something big, something amazing, and something that all the true Pokemon fans will love, especially considering they've hyped up the 20th anniversary so much this year that obviously they want to get fans talking about it and hyped up for these games, because this will give the not only the new fans of the series, but the original fans of the Pokemon series one hell of a playing experience. So with that said, don't click off the video, don't make any ridiculous comments here, just wait through and watch through the video. Let me tell you what I have to say before making your comments, and then I'm open to any criticism at all. First of all, one similar thing you can notice already about this is Pokemon X and Y. The colors, the main colors of those games are red and blue. When you compare that to the original games, Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue, which are actually their names, the main colors are red and blue. Just something to note. Okay, that's something, right? But then you take a look at the box arts, because these guys didn't actually have logos back then. They just kind of wrote out like red version, blue version. If you take a look at the sequels to Pokemon Red and Blue, which, yes, by the way, these are the first Pokemon games to officially get a sequel to them, other than Pokemon Black and White 2, but that's not really a sequel. That's okay, that is a sequel, but like the first games to get a sequel that don't have the same name. So not Pokemon Red and Blue 2. You know what I'm saying? We got Gold and Silver. And what's interesting about Gold and Silver? Well, the fact that they also seem to share a very similar color scheme to the logos of Pokemon Sun and Moon. Now, people are gonna be like, well, okay, Jason, that's a great theory, man. Great way to base that off of. I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. And this is diving way deeper into things. But not only Do Pokemon X and Y in some ways represent the same mirrored color as red and blue? But also, Sun and Moon have the potential to as well. And I'm going to show you not only the colors that are mirrored, but some of the similarities that are mirrored from Pokemon X and Y that were taken directly from Pokemon Red and Blue. But we'll get to that in a second. So, Sun and Moon, what does that relate to Gold and Silver? They may have similar color schemes just like Red and Blue did with X and Y, but what does that mean about them being the same? You'll see. So last week I was playing Uncharted 4 when it came out, and this is funny enough where I actually found this out. This is completely from something that Nathan Drake, or I think it's the main character's name. I've never played an Uncharted game before, so apologize. But I played Uncharted 4 when it came out, and I still have to beat it actually. But anyway, he said something, and I'm gonna play the cutscene for you. I'm gonna have to go replay through this part just so you can hear this because this is so important. Reminded me of. I guess open this door up. Sun and Moon. Sun and Moon confirmed.
Wait a sec. I saw something like this on the letter.
Do you guys hear what he just said? Again, if this doesn't, like, I know this is completely not Pokemon related, but, like, again, if that part, the alchemy symbols for Gold and Silver, that I just learned something there, if that doesn't also say something about Sun and Moon being directly related to Gold and Silver in some fashion, then I don't know what does. Now, obviously, that wasn't Pokemon. That's a different game, but the quote itself is what is important, not the gameplay. He said, the Sun and the Moon, those are the alchemy symbols for Gold and Silver. Huh! That's a pretty interesting quote right there. And what links that together is, the alchemy symbols for Sun and Moon. Huh. But someone may ask, what the hell are alchemy symbols? What does that have any relevance to Pokemon? Let me show you. Now, this isn't the first time that Game Freak has used some kind of symbols to portray what they're trying to say, or sort of give a hidden meaning to something. As an example, the first thing that we can note here is X and Y were the first Pokemon games to ever note the difference between using from what seemed to be colors and minerals, and they've now moved on to elements of the periodic table, or more so, different type, actually it's basically just elements of the periodic table at this point, and more so just using different symbols of different types of elements and different stuff like that. So as an example, X and Y. Another one is Omega and Alpha. Omega and Alpha, to my understanding, they're more from the Greek side of things. It says here the Greek alphabet. They're the first and last letter, and it's sort of to represent being what is it like? It's basically Alpha and Omega are like to represent like an eternal being of sorts. So it's more referencing like Jesus Christ himself. If you want to get religious about it, I'm not gonna touch on that subject. But it's to symbolize the meaning of being like eternal life, more or less. You are the first and you are the last. And so that sort of does tie into the story of Hoenn, I guess, with being the first ones to start it, where Kyogre and Groudon and Rayquaza coming in, and obviously they're going to be the last ones to stop the eternal drought or the eternal rainfall or whatever it may be. So realistically, it seems like that sort of ties in there. Again, I'm not big on alchemy, I'm not big on science, I'm not the type of person. If you know more about this kind of stuff, please leave a comment. Like, let me know, enlighten me on everything that there is to know about alchemy and all this stuff. So if I ever make a follow-up video to this, I don't sound like a complete idiot. As well as I'm just trying to make the connection here. I don't know a lot about alchemy. But as you can see here, if you come down here, and this is something else that ties in interesting, and I'm still trying to figure out a way of how this might link, but 7 planetary metals, 7, specifically 7 regions, I don't know. Something else to look at. One of the things that is said here though, gold dominated by Sol, silver dominated by Luna. You can do your own research on this yourself if you want to get more in depth with some of this stuff, because again, I don't know exactly what I'm talking about with like alchemy symbols and all this shit. I'm not into this, so I do not know fully what I'm talking about. But one thing I can tell you from this research that I have done is the fact that, first of all, there's so many different types of symbols. Alchemy symbols, just symbols from different alphabets, ancient times, symbols that have been remade and redone over time from, you know, all these different religions and stuff like that. So there's so many different symbols that mean so many different things. But what we can tell is this comes from the periodic table. That's the first thing that comes from, because every single game that we have on the Pokemon market in the Pokemon storyline basically all stems from something to do with either a mineral or an element, which ties back into the periodic table. Now, Here's where I'm gonna prove all those people wrong that said Lugia does not, or Ho-Oh and Lugia have nothing to do with this game. I'm prove you wrong right now. The first thing here, like I said, we're just gonna look at this as an example. Gold is dominated by Soul. Soul is the sun. Silver dominated by Luna. Luna is the moon. So if we look up, like I was gonna do before, I messed it up. Sun and moon alchemy symbols. All right, so I can't find like a clear breakdown definition picture that'll show you exactly what I mean. So I'm just gonna have to show you the Google search results. Like I said, I'm searching up gold and silver alchemy symbols. I changed up what I said again because I needed to show my proof here. When you search up gold and silver alchemy symbols, if you do some deeper research, I'm just trying to get this all done so I can get this video started to edit because I've been sitting here for about 45 minutes now trying to find some stuff. But what you can do is when you search up gold and silver alchemy symbols, the only things that come up are stuff to relate to the sun and the moon. You got moon, which is another, it's an alchemy symbol for silver. It was stated here on the wiki page itself. It gives you the symbols. You've also got yourself one of the sun. There's several of the sun. There's gold. That's one for the sun. There's another one for the sun. There's one for the moon. There's another one for the moon. A bunch of these different alchemy symbols that have been made and designed throughout the years. This is another one for silver right here, actually. There's just so many different types of symbols that have been made. But what it leads to is gold and silver being the symbols for sun and moon. Symbolically, they are connected. Now, with all that said, does that technically mean that I'm right? Does that mean that sun and moon are the sequel to X and Y? No, but it's possible. If we're gonna look at it the way that gold and silver did it with red and blue, let's take a look at some of these similarities right here. All right, now big shout outs to the boy HeroVoltsy. I'm using his gameplay, didn't ask him, but I'm sure he used it as mine when I used it, so thank you, Hayden, I appreciate it, man. But one thing that's interesting to note here, very, very interesting to note here. So in X and Y, in the after game specifically, you go into a place called the Unknown Dungeon, and as you can actually see, and I will show you. All right, so here you can actually see that before you beat the game, before you beat the Elite Four, this cave is blocked off, and it's blocked off by a trainer. Also, very similar to the trainer that blocks off the Cerulean Cave, which I will make a very interesting connection to. He says it takes a very special trainer to be allowed inside here. So you're not allowed to come back to this cave until I don't think it's after you beat the game. I think it's after you beat the whole Sevi Island quest as well. So you can't go back until you completed basically everything in the game. It's like the final area. Not that I have to consider this place the final area in this game, but unlike in Kanto, the cave is blocked off by a trainer until you beat the game. But then once you're allowed to go inside of it, again, shouts to HeroVoltsy for this gameplay. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description so you can go check it out, excuse me. You can actually see, once you walk in here, first of all, this place is called the Unknown Dungeon, which, fun fact, that was actually the name for Cerulean Cave originally. And look what's inside of it. Mewtwo's inside of it. But what was inside of the Cerulean Cave? And as you can see, what's inside Cerulean Cave? Mewtwo! Mewtwo's inside a Cerulean Cave! That's a clear reference to Gen 1 right there. Now that's an Easter egg that's been known and talked about for a very long time. That isn't the only thing though. Okay, this is gonna be very, very quiet, so I'm gonna probably have to raise this in editing so you can hear this, but it is very, 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 very apparent that Pikachu says its name. Kind of quiet, but I'll try and boost in editing so you can hear this. You can probably barely hear that in the background, but Pikachu actually says his name. Now, credits to my boy Hydros for this. He actually has mentioned this on several occasions. I noticed this before too, but I always like to give credit where when people have said stuff in the past. I don't want to discredit them for what they've said, but this is something that I thought was really interesting as well. Now, something interesting to note here. In the official Pokemon X and Y announcement trailer, look what Pikachu's doing. He's saying his name. He's actually saying his name. But when you compare this, all right, so let's just compare this to any other games that have used Pikachu's cry before. This is his cry for Pokemon Fire Red, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, Omega Ruby, Ruby and Sapphire, the originals. This was always Pikachu's cry in all those generations. But in Generation 1, well, specifically Pokemon Yellow, it said its name. Then it stopped. Then all of a sudden, as we get back up to Gen 6, which again, presumably models Pokemon Red and Blue, it starts saying its name again. That's an interesting coincidence, isn't it? So that's something else to throw in the mix there. Alright, now another thing to tie this in together, if we take it all the way back to Pokemon Red and Blue, the only legendary Pokemon that were in that game were Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres, and Mewtwo. Those were 4 Pokemon that were available as legendaries. Mew wasn't available, not at least by legitimate purposes anyway. You could get it by doing some glitches, but getting it legitimately, impossible. These are the only 4 Pokemon that you can get legendary-wise in the game. But then in X and Y, what 4 legendary Pokemon are brought back again? Aside from the 3 mascot legends, you got Mewtwo, you got Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres. Funny coincidence how this keeps sort of mirroring Red and Blue, doesn't it? It just seems so coincidental. Okay, now the final thing I'm gonna compare Red and Blue to X and Y about. First of all, the evil organization known as Team Rocket, this is the first time they'd ever been introduced, and their goal was to steal everybody's Pokemon and then eventually work your way up to world domination. Just like basically every evil team of Pokemon is always focused on world domination of some sort, but they started out smaller, and to be honest, they were not the greatest team, quite incompetent. So, after the main character, Red, ends up defeating Giovanni in the 8th gym, which by the way, you come to find out that he is the 8th gym leader. After he has defeated Giovanni, Giovanni decides to disband Team Rocket forever and then never ever ever return again, or so we thought, until the sequel when he does return and he brings Team Rocket back to its former glory. So, what's interesting about that, Lysandre, who is this new leader, new boss we've never seen or heard of before, he owns Team Flare. His goal, world domination, but except this time he wants to destroy everybody except Team Flare. Now with this, it's presumed he either might be dead or he teleported out of the Team Flare HQ. Again, check out my previous theory video on that. It might explain that more in depth, but it's possible he could return in Sun and Moon. Very, very possible. And if he does, that I could totally see them do it. I really realistically could see them doing that. After all the throwback hints that they've had, I could totally see them bringing back Lysandre as a surprise in Sun and Moon. Just like how Giovanni did originally. Alright, so here's another thing that's very, very interesting. As you all know, you start off in your hometown in X and Y, and you make your way out into the open, first city, all that stuff, after you get your starter and all that cool stuff. But the first thing that you do, before you get to go fight the first gym, is you go through a forest, both in Red and Blue and in X and Y. You go through a forest, and God, if this does not scream that this game is going to, or has modeled Red and Blue, and that Sun and Moon will follow the same pattern, I do not know what will. Take a look at the aerial view of Santaloon Forest, which is the first forest you go in Pokemon X and Y. Now, compare that to the layout of the Viridian Forest. Let's put these in Photoshop side by side. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. Let me show you this. Look at this side by side and how similar this is. So first of all, you come in at the start here, in the middle of it. There's a tree right there. There's also a tree right there, right as you come in. Then, not to mention, you move on from there. So we go up this way, up the right. You can have an option to go around this little island right here. And if you compare that to right here, you go up through the right. There's a little, even the little dip is right there. There's a little dip in the trees. Comes up, there's a new path. You move your way up, there's a little island at the top. There's a little island at the top as you move your way up to the path. Then there's the dip right back down, like it's spot on. Literally everything is spot on as you start to notice this. This is literally the exact same layout. And you exit through by going down from the island over here or whatever, come up through here, go down again, and then go up again and you're out. What do you do from here? You come up, you either go around the island or you take just a left going this way, you go down, you go up, you go down again, and then finally, you go up. There's even a little dip in the far crevice back here that has an item in it that is also in this game. And fun fact, there's a hidden Pokeball in the original game right a tile before you fight this trainer, which is, or I think it's a Pokeball or an antidote, it's one of the two. But regardless, the layout is exactly the same. So I think I said enough to probably prove my point at this point, that Sun and Moon are most likely to be something similar to Gold and Silver, or Gold, Silver, and Crystal technically, but Pokemon X and Y, in many, many aspects, it mirrors Red and Blue. by doing similar things that those games had, or by having similar events in those games that those games had, and overall just a similar type of story. It's exactly what is portrayed in Pokemon X and Y, and it was like a new journey for those Pokemon trainers who just started playing. Now, most people who know of Pokemon X and Y, because those were a very, very, very popular title, most people probably know of Pokemon Sun and Moon now. And what a lot of new players might not expect or even figure is that these are definitely going to be a sequel to X and Y. And to all those people who said there's no way that this is going to have any relation whatsoever to X and Y, you're wrong. And I promise you that you are wrong. I'm not trying to sound like a dick, and I'm not trying to be like conceited and say my opinion is correct. I have a very good reason to believe so. And honestly, I think that if some people are more open-minded to the fact that this game really is trying to mirror Pokemon Gold and Silver, then my idea of having a possible Primal Ho-Oh or Lugia or something like that in maybe the after game, maybe not in the main series or main storyline, but again, it is possible, but it's probably going to be something safe for the after game. Again, now this is something that everybody's been waiting for me to finally talk about. And that is, what are going to be the roles of Lunala and Solgaleo? As of right now, I still have yet to do a breakdown for those two Pokemon because, one, we don't know their names yet, and I'm pretty sure that the new information that's coming out on June 2nd, which, depending on by the time you see this, might have already passed, but I think it's probably out by now, or no, it's not already out by now by the time you're uploading, or I'm uploading this. I think it's possible, very, very, very possible, that Lunala and Solgaleo are going to be the other two spiritual guardians or teachers in the Whirling Rainbow prophecy. If you missed that part in my original storyline explain video, check this out and this will make more sense. Other mythologies under this listing on Wikipedia, it states, the Whirling Rainbow prophecy. There will come a day where people of all races, colors, and creeds will put aside their differences. They will come together in love, joining hands in unification to heal the earth and all her children. They will move over the earth like the great whirling rainbow, bringing peace, understanding, and healing everywhere they go. Many creatures that were thought to be extinct or mythical will resurface at this time. The great trees that perished will return almost overnight. All living things will flourish, drawing sustenance from the breast of our mother, the earth. The great spiritual teachers who walked the earth and taught the basics of the truths of the Whirling Rainbow prophecy will return and walk amongst us once more, sharing their power and understanding with all of us. We will learn how to see and hear in a sacred manner. So assuming that Game Freak wants to base Sun and Moon storyline off the Whirling Rainbow prophecy, the one thing that it could lead to is it could lead to a very large series of natural disasters or corruption in Sun and Moon. So after you've seen that clip, you know that, again, Norse mythology takes a big part of this game's story into play, as well as, like I said, there's 4 teachers of the Whirling Rainbow prophecy. Well, let's say 2 of those are Ho-Oh and Lugia, who come back and teach people the new ways of living in peace and being able to reform everything back to the way it was before the whole island went to shit due to the events of Ragnarok. Again, definitely check out that whole video if you have yet to see it, because it's going to prove basically everything that I said to be correct. Most of it anyway. So, in that video I also mentioned there was 2 other spiritual teachers that could be Zygarde and Yveltal. But more realistically, they are probably the Pokemon Sun and Moon legendaries, considering Lugia and Ho-Oh are like the counterparts to them, more or less. Even though they're both birds and they both fly, in a way they're sort of like the original counterparts to them, if that makes sense, if we're going to compare them to mirroring both Gold, Silver, or Gold and Silver. So with all that said and done and out of the way, I don't know the full details about I keep saying Lunala and Lunala and Solgaleo, but there will be an informational breakdown video that's going to come out to my channel. A lot of people have been asking me to make a follow-up to what those guys' roles in the story might be, and I have a really interesting idea cooking up in my brain right now. But as far as it goes for talking about how these games model the original Generation 1 and Generation 2, then I don't know. Hopefully you found it interesting. Hopefully it blew your mind. And more importantly, I hope that you did learn something from this video. Again, these are all just theories, and a lot of this is not, it's pretty concrete proof, to be honest, what I stated in this video. Again, the whole purpose of this is just saying X and Y, it is completely meant to model and be sort of like the future successor, the future rendition of Pokemon Red and Blue. Almost the same story it originally introduced to us 20 years ago, but redone. And now they're redoing the same thing they did with Gold Silver, being the sequel to Red and Blue, that is exactly what Sun and Moon are. There's so many similarities between these games that just make it almost undeniable at this point that we're going to be seeing some kind of not only reference to Gold and Silver and more references like we did in X and Y that I showed off earlier in Sun and Moon, but we're also hopefully maybe gonna be seeing Primal Ho-Oh and Primal Lugia. I'm praying, I'm hoping that might happen. I don't know, I'm kind of doubtful, but I'm also kind of not at the same time. So we might see it happen, we may not see it happen, but this whole video was to show you the similarities between Pokemon Red and Blue and X and Y and Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Sun and Moon, and to show all those non-believers out there that number one, Gen 7 is a sequel to Gen 6, 100%, no doubt about it in my mind, and second of all, that Zygarde, oh, you better believe he's going to be playing a big part. Watch this little clip from a previous video.
Linking the natural disasters that are potentially created by a supermoon and the fact that Pokemon Sun and Moon are more likely to be set in Hawaii, as shown in a video on Jason's channel where there will be a link to that in the description, so be sure to check that out if you don't really understand why we're basing Sun and Moon in Hawaii. But Hawaii is a state that is prone to natural disasters, which gives us the impression that this would be the best place for Lysandre to awaken Zygarde's 100% form. As the legend implies, only during dire need does Zygarde ever gather all of its cells to handle heavy disaster to the ecosystem. In this form, Zygarde is 4.5 meters tall and weighs 610 kilograms, and has become the system Pokemon. Zygarde Complete is now capable of handling Xerneas and Yveltal, as its power has exceeded both of theirs. Zygarde still retains its Dragon Ground type combination and takes the shape of all its previous forms as well. However, the natural disasters alone would not be enough to awaken Zygarde. I mean, who really likes being woken up nowadays? I can totally see where Zygarde's coming from.
And with that clip from the previous video, if that doesn't tie it all together, I don't know what does, man. But with that being said, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a thumbs up and share this video around with some friends and all that stuff and let them know about it. See what their opinion is of it as well. Because honestly, I'm just curious to know what everybody else thinks of this. Maybe I'm freaking crazy. Maybe a lot of you guys probably think I'm crazy too. But I'm just curious to see. With all this information and all these facts presented, it almost seems impossible that Sun and Moon are not directly related to X and Y and will be continuing the same story. But with all that being said and done, I'm going to get on out of here now. Thank you all so much for watching once again. My name is Jason, and I'll catch you dudes in the next one.